Hi, everyone. Just doing a quick check to see if you can hear me, you can see me. Hi, Anu, and hi, Rashi. Thanks, Rashi. How's everyone doing today? Hi, Edlin and Anne. Yes, Anu, that's why we've got today's live session happening. That's going to be one of the main topics that I'm going to talk about, because I've had a lot of questions about shelf life of sweets and things like that. So I'll just give it a couple more minutes and wait for a few more people to join in, and then we'll start. Hi, Priska. So, Anne, all the way in Dubai, what time is it? It must be really early there. Hi, Noof. I hope I'm saying your names right. Vidita, hello. I hope you don't get in too much trouble for that, Anne. While we wait for people to join in, if you've got any questions that the videos haven't answered or that the blog posts haven't answered, make sure that you leave that in the chat over here so that I can see it as we're waiting. And if it's not covered in the topics that or the pointers that I've taken down, I'll definitely address them as best I can. I have made a few notes just so that I don't miss anything. So if you see me glancing away, I'm just looking back at my notes. Priska, all the way from Canada, what time is it there? It must be really late. Hi, Savio, good to see you again. Thank you, Melissa. Good morning. I'm also trying to read the comments as we go on. So, hi, Margaret. That's good to know. I'm doing well. Thank you. I hope you're well too. You'll probably have to whip up another batch of milk cream. That one's going to disappear. Just as we're waiting, how many of you have only recently joined or rather subscribed to the channel? Is there anyone? I know Savio was here the last time I did a Q&A session. And since the last time, there's been a lot of new subscribers joining in. So I'm curious to see who's been around for a while. That's great to hear, Anu. Now you can make them too. Hi, Lizzie. Have you had a chance to taste the plum cake or have you made it for Christmas? Oh, fantastic. So there's a fair bit of you that have been around a while and a few of you that have only recently subscribed. That's great. I think we'll get started. For those of you who are joining me later or come in later, I will leave this live stream on the channel so that you've got access to it even after the chat is over, if that makes sense. Hi, Violet. Thank you. Edlin, you'll do fine with the marzipan. Just make sure that you keep the quantities to the rest, as in follow the quantities, the instructions, and that cold water test makes a world of a difference. Don't ignore that cold water test because otherwise then it's just a lot of mixing, a lot of needing to rectify it. You'll do well. Good morning, Dane. Okay, I think we'll start. We've got a few people here now, and thank you for joining me. Thank you for being here on time. Those of you who are new here and might not have seen my recent videos, my name is Trisha, and I'm the face behind the Aspiring Home Cook. The reason I say that is because it's only recently that I've actually managed to gather a little confidence to come in front of the camera. I'm more of a behind the camera person. I'm happy in the kitchen doing my cooking, writing up my recipes and things like that. But in front of the camera, I get super nervous. So, okay. Now, I had a couple of questions regarding how I plan my sweet making spree for Christmas, especially because different sweets have different shelf lives. Some will last a lot longer than others. Some have a very short shelf life. So as a guide at the onset, there's one thing that's key to remember. Anything that has coconut and anything that has dairy in it tends to have a far shorter shelf life than other recipes. Now, what I'm going to share with you is the process that I follow and what works for me. I've been doing this for a number of years. I've even done it on a slightly larger scale. Ages ago, what seems like a lifetime ago, I used to make sweets to order. I don't do that anymore. But these are a few tips and tricks that have helped me actually keep my sanity. So before you start, I'm just going to tell you what I typically do. Before you start, you're going to have to make a list of all the things that you want to make. I know that I don't have all the recipes on my channel, but I'm sure some of you have a few other recipes in mind as well that you want to put together for Christmas or any time of the year, really. So I would recommend starting out with a list. Put down a list of all the things you want to make. Once you've got that, grab hold of a calendar, a diary, a planner, whatever you might have. That's what I do. And the first thing I do is put down work hours, any other commitments that I have in the run up to Christmas. So let's say today is the 13th of December. It's a decent enough time to get started with your prep for Christmas. So from now right up to Christmas and through the holiday week and season, I will actually make a note of other commitments that I have. Based on that, I decide how much time I have on a given day. What I mean by that is, let's say I have a really busy day at work on a certain day, and I know I'm just going to have maybe an hour and a half when I come back in the evening, or whatever time of the day it is that you guys come back from work. I'm going to have just a very short period of time, and I want to get at least one thing done. That will help you decide whether you can actually start off with a process and with a recipe like, for example, kalkalzonuri, something that's a little more time intensive, or is it just enough time to whip up a quick batch of date rolls or something like that? So once you decide that, just roughly note down. Of course, this is your schedule. You can change, you can swap things around to suit what works for you. Put down a rough idea of what you intend making and when. Now, typically what helps me decide is this. I have 3 different categories of sweets. One is a set of things that will last for a really, really long time. So if you want to get started with your Christmas sweets this weekend, it's a great time to start. Start off with things like kalkals, date rolls, guava cheese, even your nankatai is fudge if you're making chocolate fudge. These things have a much longer shelf life than others. Now, your fudge you'll have to keep refrigerated. Everything gets stored in an airtight container. Remember that, guys. In the past, I've had instances where viewers have come to me telling me that their kalkals and nankatais have started off nice and crisp, not nankatais, but kalkals and rose cookies have started out nice and crisp, but then eventually, as time went on, it got soft. Now, that was a little puzzling. And when I chatted with them a little more, I realized that they were storing it in a massive plastic bag tied up and then in a container of sorts. If your container is airtight, fantastic. But if you're just putting it in a big bag and just knotting it up, even if you're double bagging it, it's not airtight. Remember the edges of these sweets, your kalkals, newries, if you make chaklis or even rose cookies, they have sharp edges and points. It is going to make a little hole in those bags and the air is going to get in. Your sweets are going to get soft. So all of that effort is you're going to be gutted when things get soft and are not as crispy as they originally started out to be. So airtight containers, and start off with these things. Now, I can tell you from experience that guava cheese lasts a very, very long time. Just as an experiment, I kept a few pieces in the fridge, in the back of my fridge, as far away from the door as I possibly could, and it stayed good in there for a good 6 months. Of course, then I didn't wait any longer than that. We finished it off, and there was absolutely no change to the taste, to the texture, none of that. Your fudge, whether you're making a dark chocolate fudge or even things like that gingerbread fudge that I've shared on my channel before, those have to be refrigerated. How I refrigerate them is again in an airtight container, but I put layers of baking paper, parchment paper, whatever you know it by, between each layer. So I put down a layer of parchment paper, all the pieces of fudge are arranged in a single layer, followed by another piece of parchment paper, my next layer of fudge, if that makes sense. With things like guava cheese, if you've got the right texture and it's not too sticky when you take it off, again, remember that water test helps out a lot. You really don't need to layer it up. You can if you want to, but I've never had trouble with just stacking the pieces one on top of the other. The same goes for things like milk cream and marzipan. I'll come to that in a little bit. With your fruit cake, if your fruit cake is too wet, like dripping wet, it may reduce the shelf life of it a little. However, if you've got a nice moist fruit cake that has baked well, is not too sticky on the top and things like that, it will last you a fair while. Sorry, I'm just trying to catch up on the comments. I've missed a few. Sorry, Violet, what? Oh, okay, you're trying to make marzipan tomorrow and will it remain till New Year? All of these tips that I'm giving you really depend on your weather conditions, the climate. It's really hard for me to know what the weather is like in every part of the world, but if it's hot and humid, the shelf life drops a little more. Your marzipan, I'd say shelf life ideally at room temperature is about 5 to 8 days. That's being conservative. It'll probably last you longer than that if it's not too hot, not too humid. If you want it to last longer, pop it in an airtight container in the fridge. The only downside to that is when you take it out of the fridge, the pieces of marzipan may sweat a little. But the taste will be perfect. There'll be nothing wrong with the taste, nothing wrong with the texture. Okay, what's next? My plate with the kalkals. That is a fairly old plate. I think it's about 6 years, maybe 6 years old. I bought it at, if you're familiar with the Maya chain of stores in Australia, I got it from there. They come out with a beautiful range every Christmas, as do most other big department stores. I picked it up over there. Sabita, I would personally add salt, but it really depends on how salty the cheese is, how salty the butter is. I would add a little salt, but then again, you've got to kind of wing it, add it to taste. Maybe what you can do is put a little bit in, taste a tiny bit of that dough to check and see. Sometimes that gives you a little bit of an indication of whether it is salty enough. I know it's not the best way to explain it, but remember that the cheese that you're using, as well as the butter that you're using or the butter replacement that you're using, all over the world, every brand has a different amount of salt content. So you're going to have to maybe try a small batch, see how that works so that you know for future reference how much salt to add. Okay, that was as far as the sweets go, the ones with the long shelf life. Does anyone have any questions about that bit so far? So we've spoken about kalkals, date rolls. Date rolls, super long life. Put them in an airtight container like you would a box of biscuits or cookies, and they'll stay good for a while. You can make them now, enjoy them early Jan. Absolutely nothing will happen, provided you don't go in with wet hands or wet utensils. Keep it dry, keep it away from the heat. I usually put it in a cabinet in a cool, dark place and never have any trouble. While making marzipan and milk cream has the amount of sugar to do with the hardening of the sweet. Hi, Dominic. Yes, it does. The science behind that, I'm not familiar with. I'm going to be dead honest with you. However, what I find is when you drop the sugar content too much, it may compromise how well the sweets set and form at the end. So after a lot of experimenting, if you've seen typical recipes for marzipan as well as milk cream all over the internet or wherever you find them, you will notice that there's a lot more sugar that is usually in these recipes. What I've done is over the years, I have tinkered with my recipe and tried and brought that sugar level down because, I mean, everyone's trying to cut down on the amount of sugar that they use. So I've tried and dropped that down as far as I can. And I think I've achieved a level which is not sickeningly sweet, if you know what I mean, compared to what you find is commercially available. Apart from that, substitutions, changes to the quantities, I really cannot guarantee what the outcome will be. As I mentioned in one of my previous videos, I have a lot of questions asking me whether you can substitute one ingredient for another. Some of the bits and pieces I may be able to help you with, but remember, these recipes are tried and tested. They work out fantastically for me. I've never, ever had the need to tweak them or move things around or change the proportions or quantities. So it's not always possible for me to know how they're going to turn out. If you follow the recipe to the T with the quantities of ingredients and so on, you'll get a bang-on result. Other than that, you can always experiment. That's what recipes are there for. Experiment, see how you go. But then again, I'm just putting it out there. It may or may not turn out like it was intended to. I hope that answers your questions that you have about substitutions. Hi, Olivia. I'm just going to quickly look through the comments to see if I've missed anything. The Spidey team, hello. I'm sorry, the folks at the Spidey team, I don't know your name, so I really can't address you by name. Michelle, your kalkals tend to open up on frying. There's an easy fix for that. When you're rolling out your kalkals, just make sure that you give it a light press at the end so that, you know, the seam stays fixed. Again, if your dough is, if you're following the quantities given, you shouldn't have a problem. Sometimes it could be because there's less moisture in there. Maybe, but before you go ahead and make changes to the actual recipe, just try pressing the edge down a little bit, just where it ends right at the seam, and it should stay shut. I've never really had too much of a problem with kalkals opening up on frying. Okay, moving on to my next set. Those are sweets with a medium, or yeah, I'd say a medium amount of shelf life. Rose cookies for sure. You've got egg in there. Again, it's fried, and the roast cookies are best when they're nice and crisp. I personally would not make them too far in advance. And honestly, guys, I don't know how you end up considering shelf life. If I were to make my sweets in advance, they would disappear, trust me. Before thinking about shelf life, they would get wiped up and clean. So I'm glad that you you guys have folks at home with a little more restraint than we do. Okay. Now, in that medium shelf life category, I would also put things like marzipan and newries. Again, talking about, we've just spoken about the best way to store marzipan and milk cream. I would recommend room temperature. That's the best. But marzipan, again, has a shelf life of 5 to 8 days. If you want it longer, pop it in the fridge in an airtight container. However, it could sweat a little once it's taken out to room temperature. Milk cream has a much shorter shelf life. I'd say about 3 to 5 days. Depending on how much moisture there is at the end of your recipe, if it's a little tacky, it may go off sooner than if it's dried out a little more. That being said, I find it extremely hard to save a batch of milk cream if it's gone past the gone past the stage or overcooked. Marzipan can be fixed. Milk cream, I haven't had the best luck with it yet. So I'd rather have a batch of milk cream with a slightly shorter shelf life, if that makes sense, rather than have to chuck the whole batch out. Okay, so marzipan, medium shelf life. Newries. I know I haven't yet shared my newry recipe. It's really hard when I try to work everything into my schedule. I'm going to try my best to share that with you this Christmas. If not, it's definitely on the list and will be on the channel in the future. Depending on the filling that you're using for your newries, it decides on how long they last. If you're using fresh coconut in your newries, they probably won't last too long. In my recipe, we typically use desiccated coconut, and that easily lasts for, I'd say, a month, even two, maybe. I don't know. They've never really lasted that long in my house. So Patricia, hi. Can I make dodol without jaggery? As in Sydney, we don't get it. Can I use brown sugar? What ratio? Dodol's a slightly dicey one. You can make it without your goa jaggery, but then the coloring gets a little, the taste is just not the same. I am working on fixing up an old recipe that I have for dodol, so I hope to have that up soon as well. I have heard that you can use a little bit of molasses, and molasses typically creates some sort of similar flavor to goa jaggery, though it's not 100% the same. Again, please keep in mind that the brand of molasses that you use is going to make a huge difference. I've tried two brands. One is the Blue Label brand. The Blue Label brand works well. I've tried the organic brand from Coles, and I don't like it one single bit. It's a very, very strong flavor for me, and I find that it ruins the taste of things like pancakes and dodol and things like that. So I hope that answers your question. Okay. Hi, Renuka. Sharalana, for you, sadly, marzipan spoils faster than milk cream. Do you use the no-cook marzipan or the cooked version? Okay, while I wait for you to answer, I'll quickly move on to my my notes for the ones with short shelf life, and we'll wrap up that bit so that we can move on. The cooked one. And if you don't mind me asking, where are you based? What's the weather like where you are? Okay, while I'm waiting for Sharlana to respond, sweets with a short shelf life. Now, these are ones you want to wait till the very end. Coconut toffee, those, bath. If you're making a no-cook version of marzipan, that too. Milk cream and cakes like your sponge cake, anything that's not a fruit-heavy cake. These won't last as long as the other sweets, so you want to leave them towards the end. How we go about doing it, and we've been doing it this way ever since I was a little girl, we start off with things like perad and kalkals, followed by the fruit cake. And let's see, what else? Like I mentioned, coconut toffee, those bath is usually done a day or two, at least in my house, a day or two before Christmas, as is milk cream. We've not always made milk cream, but ever since I found what works for me as far as milk cream goes, that probably gets done on the 23rd, maybe. Yeah, so that's how I plan my schedule for Christmas sweets. Cooked marzipan in Canada. I'm stumped. I don't know why that happens, but if you find that it's always happened, Sharlana, put it in the fridge. I'm sure that it won't sweat as much because the humidity and the heat, I mean, it's freezing cold where you are, so it should be all right. Maria, how do I make the outer covering of the Newries crisp? What I find is that the best way to do that is when you fry it, your oil has to be hot, but make sure that you're frying it over a medium-low heat. The quicker it fries, the faster it browns, and it won't necessarily be crisp. Also, when you're rolling out your pastry for the Newries, it's got to be nice and thin. If it's thick, it'll become more like a puri and won't stay crisp for too long. Okay, can you give me advice on how to make my fruit cake dark brown? What recipe are you following, Patricia? Are you using the one on my website, or is that your own personal recipe, if you don't mind me asking? Okay, while I'm waiting for those responses, if you've got any other questions about the shelf life of sweets, now's the time to pop them into that chat. Does your recipe have caramel in it? Your mom's recipe, does it have caramel in it? So a couple of things that you can do is, ideally for a darker color, I know that there are folks that use color, but I personally don't like that idea. It doesn't really add any flavor to the cake at all. I use treacle. You can use a little bit of molasses, but molasses will also change the flavor profile. It'll be like adding a little guar jaggery to your cake, and I'm not really sure how that's going to turn out. But if you've got access to treacle, try a little bit of treacle. Have a look at the recipe that I have, and you'll see that there's treacle in there. If I'm not mistaken, there is some amount of brown sugar also that you can use in your recipe to make it darker. Those are a few things that you can try and sneak into your existing recipe and still have it turn a darker shade. Okay. Now that we've spoken about shelf life and how to keep things or how to store things, there's a few things that you can do to keep your sanity through the Christmas season. That's what I do, at least. Your shopping. Get your shopping done ahead of time. When I say shopping, I'm not talking about gifts and things like that. I would personally do that shopping way, way, way before December even rolls around. I'm talking about your ingredients. Once you have your list that we spoke about at the start of things that you want to make, put down your ingredients that you're going to need for those recipes. Go and buy them all at one go. Those of you that are in Mumbai and quite a few other places, I know you will have the option to have goods delivered to you. So have them delivered. Try and not get out and about too much. You need to stay safe. I know things can get really crowded in shops and things like that around this time of the year. I personally, all of the quantities that I need, I usually buy a little more so that I don't fall short. Or if I have to make a second batch, I've got some just as a buffer. Now, once you've done that, there's a little bit of prep that you can do even before you start making your sweets. So if you don't have the time just yet, or you want to push your sweet making session to a few days further, maybe towards the 20th, there are a few things that you can do even before then to make your life a little easier. Do things like your little bit of prep. If you're making a fruit cake, go ahead, cut that fruit, soak it in rum. If you're making fruit cake, your fruit should be soaking by now. The longer it soaks, the tastier your cake will be, and the fruit will also absorb a lot more flavor from the rum or the wine, whatever it is that you're soaking it in. You can also prep a few other things. Powder your sugar. You'll be surprised at how many recipes require powdered sugar. If you're baking, all your cakes need, or I'd say most of your cakes, your cookies, all of that require powdered sugar. Go ahead, grind that sugar up, store it in a glass jar, an airtight container. That way you have it ready. You can weigh it, measure it as you need to, and use it straight away. It doesn't seem like much, but if you count the number of things you're making and the number of batches of each you're making, and you sit and you're going to sit, and if you have to sit and grind the sugar for each batch individually, that can really add up. It takes a lot of time. Just do it all at one go. That way you've got to wash that mixer jar out just once after dealing with your sugar. Your spices. I know there's a lot of cooking, not just sweets, but even savory things, your main meals and things like that. Get your spices in order. If you have to make spice powders, how many of you make spice powders at home? I'm sure a lot of you do. Go ahead and do that now so that in the run up to Christmas, you're not scrambling around with an empty jar of coriander powder or something like that. And if possible, do a little bit of food prep. What I mean by that is, if I know I'm going to start making sweets 2 days from now, I'll probably cook a couple of extra batches of food. That way I've got leftovers in the fridge. So on the days when I'm actually making my sweets, I don't have to worry about getting a meal on the table for lunch or dinner. I've got something to fall back on. Okay, fantastic. So quite a few of you make your spice powders and mixes at home. Let's see, what else do I have? Another thing you can do is break out. If you're like me, space is at an all-time, I have an all big time shortage of space in my kitchen. I've got so much of stuff in terms of equipment and pots and pans and things like that. I have to pack away my occasional use equipment like my milk cream, marzipan molds and all of that. And those come out just maybe once or twice a year. So bring those out, give them a good clean if they need to, have them ready. These are just things that, little things that I know it seems like common sense to a lot of people, but it doesn't occur to some of us that these can actually save time in those last 4 or 5 days before Christmas. Also your packaging. If you're someone that does little care packages or hampers for family, assortment packs for family, friends, sort out all that packaging and all of that. That does not have shelf life. So you can do that well in advance and have that all ready. At the end of the day, remember, have fun when you're making those sweets. I know it can seem like it's a little stressful and everyone's trying to get everything 100%. It's really important to have fun. Put on some Christmas carols, listen to some Christmas music, have some fun. And maybe at the end, sit down with a glass of wine. Hi, Eugenia. Your roast cookies. What happens to your Rose cookies. Patricia, I don't have that nori filling recipe at hand at the moment, but I'll try and get that up as soon as I can. Hi, Patty. Okay, I'm just going to go through and see if I've missed out anything. I think that's about it from me. That's all I had planned. If you've got any questions, now's the time. If not, we'll wind up for the day. Has anyone started making sweets this year already? Savi, it saves heaps of time. It's an absolute game changer for me. It doesn't look like there's too many questions. Again, guys, remember for most of the videos, I try as far as possible to leave a link in the description box just below the video. So that will take you to my website. The website has a lot more details than I can actually fit into a video. As it is, these videos get really long. So the blog posts are usually a lot more detailed. They have a lot of information in terms of how to store your, whether it is sweets or whatever recipe you're following, how you can store your the food that you make, as well as how much it yields. I try and include all of that. I know there's been some confusion in the past. It's a little hard when I have my measurements in cups. People want to know how to measure the ingredients in grams. If I have my ingredients in grams, I get questions on how to measure it in cups. So I know with the imperial and metric systems, it's really confusing for everybody right now. But going forward, I'm going to try and put both down so that it's there for whoever needs it. In the meanwhile, if you're following a recipe that requires you to use a cup measure, I know that in the US compared to Australia, there might be some differences, in the quantities. But as long as you're using the same cup measure for all the ingredients in that recipe, you should be fine. Eugenia, are you talking about the batter for rose cookies? I think we were talking about rose cookies. I can't remember. For all those who have joined the live stream a little later, we've spoken about how to prep and plan your Christmas sweets. What are the best ways to store each of the sweets that you make? So if you've missed the start, this live stream will be available on the channel. Feel free to go back and look through it. There's also another Q&A video that I'd gone live for last Christmas that has a lot more information. Go ahead, watch that if you have any doubts or you feel like you need a little more information other than what's in the video. Another point is I get a lot of questions in the comments. It's getting increasingly hard to keep up with the comments. I read each and every one of them. I try and do my best to answer each and every one of them, but it's getting more and more challenging, especially at this time of the year. I find that people tend to skip through the videos. Like I said, I know these are chatty. I know they're long. And yes, I have been told that I talk too much. I know that. That's how I am. But if you skip through parts of the video, you probably will miss out on information that's critical at those points that you've skipped through. A lot of times I have people coming up with questions that have already been covered in the video. Maybe have a look through the complete video. I try as far as possible to be as detailed as I can. So if you miss something, just maybe take it back a minute or two and see if that's already been covered. But other than that, I will try my hardest to answer all of the questions that come through. Okay. So, Eugenia, I've got a recipe for rose cookies in which I actually talk about the consistency of the batter and how to tell what's going wrong with your batter and how you can fix that as well. So maybe have a look at that video if you haven't done so already. And fingers crossed, your rose cookies will turn out fantastic this time around. Okay. Vivina, your vanilla essence will do that for you. If your recipe calls for vanilla essence, use a good quality vanilla essence. Again, don't go overboard, but if you leave out the essence or the flavoring, like in case of bath, there's no vanilla, but we use cardamom powder or elaichi. That helps counter the smell. Otherwise, I am working on a whole bunch of plant-based recipes, so eggless recipes. I have a lot of questions about, now that we're talking about this, I think it's a good idea to give you a head start on what to look forward to in the coming year. For those, some of you might have already noticed, I have had a few very interesting and very informative chats with some of you. You will have noticed that in the last year or so, all of my recipe posts on the channel have had the tag vegan somewhere there, or plant-based or egg-free. My husband and I decided to make the switch to a plant-based diet last December. Now, there's a number of reasons. I will do a detailed video on that separately because otherwise this one will go on forever. But I am going to be working on a few more recipes without egg. I know there's a few of you on this channel who either personally or have family members that are allergic to eggs or dairy and things like that. So hopefully these recipes will help you. Okay. So I know that I've had a lot of requests for things like for other food items. I've had questions about whether I make only sweets. No, I do cook savory stuff as well. I do most of the cooking in my household. So I do make curries. I do make all of the rest of my food, so to say. I will be sharing those recipes. I will be sharing vegan versions of those recipes. Now, please, guys, don't get put off when I say vegan recipes. All that means is I'm not going to use meat. I'll probably be using something plant-based, a vegetable in its place. I hope you will continue to support me. I'm not trying to tell you how to go about or the diet that you follow. I hope you appreciate that this is a choice that my husband and I have made. And trust me, it's not bad. We've never felt better than we have in the last 1 year. So I will share those recipes, but I'll be sharing those recipes done my way. Remember, my recipes are not the be all and the end all. I get a lot of flack for how some of my recipes are not authentic Goan. I don't know what that even means. I mean, if a Goan's cooking it, it's got to be Goan, right? Anyway, I was just kidding. I know that there are some tried and tested recipes, and some of them, or there's a lot of similarities in most of the recipes. But remember, guys, every family has their own way of doing things. So whether it is a sweet, whether it's a curry, whether it is a pickle, do what works for your family. Changes happen over a period of time. So let's learn to respect people's differences and not get too upset when you see a certain ingredient not being used or things done a little differently. Anyway, that's me. I tend to babble. I think I'm going to stop on that trip right now. Okay, I think there's no more questions coming through. Irene, we've already spoken about how early to make sweets in the run-up to Christmas. If you've joined us a little later, go ahead and probably scroll back to the start of the video. That's where we spoke about how to plan your schedule for Christmas. That'll help. Eugenia, did you end up buying a measuring scale? Is that what you're trying to say? A weighing scale, a kitchen scale? Hi, Sierra. No, I haven't yet spoken about that. I will do a separate video because I know a lot of folks that have joined us today have joined and come here specifically for Christmas sweets. But yes, I will talk about that in a separate video. There's a whole bunch of different reasons, and it's something that we've chosen to do. It's not something that has been imposed on us, or it's not on the advice of a doctor, so to say. It's a proactive choice that we've made. So I will talk about that. Now, when you see the word vegan, don't get put off. It doesn't mean that there's funky or all kinds of strange ingredients in things. I know that's how I used to think of it way, way, way back when. It simply means there's different types. Yes, you can use, you will find recipes where they use all kinds of processed replacements for meat products or animal products, animal protein and things like that. But it can be as simple as just replacing those with things that are found in nature. When I say things that are found in nature, I'm talking about your everyday pulses, lentils, things like that. So when you see the tag vegan at the end of my recipe or my video title, don't let that put you off. The recipes are still good. If you trust my sweet videos, I know a lot of you have had success with them. Give the savory ones a try. You'll be surprised at how good they are. You don't need to have a whole bunch of fancy ingredients. So, Sierra, I should have that video up soon. And you're absolutely right. We're blessed coming from an Indian background. There's so many different options, and I think Indian food is one of the easiest to make 100% plant-based. Just a few substitutions and the variety and the options are endless. So I will do a video on that very soon. Lee, jujubes. I'm going to have to work on a plant-based version of jujubes because jujubes use gelatin. I no longer use gelatin, so that might take a little longer. I don't think I'll have that recipe up for this Christmas, but again, hopefully I'll get that up for next year. Okay, my husband tells me that I've gone on for way too long and you guys have spent way too much time here with me. So I think I'm going to listen to him now. It has been a very long time. Yes, Sierra, we started out that way and have made a complete switch. I'd say November, December of 2019. Yep. But I think I'm going to tap out at the moment. Thank you to each and every one of you for subscribing. Thank you to each and every one of you for watching the videos. Honestly, when I started, I didn't think anyone was going to be interested in my videos, but seeing how our little community has grown, it's blown my mind completely. Thank you to every single one of you for your support. Remember, be kind to yourself, be kind to others. I want to take this opportunity to wish you all, you, your families, your near and dear ones, a Merry Christmas. If you don't celebrate Christmas, have a wonderful holiday season. And let's hope that 2021 is kinder to us than this year has been. Stay safe, have a lot of fun, and don't forget, take pictures of the sweets that you make, take pictures of the recipes that you recreate, share them on either my Facebook group or on Instagram. Tag me at the Aspiring Home Cook, and I'll pop them into my stories for the rest of the community to have a look at. That way, all of us can see what you've come up with. Again, thank you so much for all your support. I'll see you soon with my next video. Bye, guys.